would consider a high-value woman is, I would always say somebody who adds value. Yeah, it's not a leech, adds value. Some way, shape or form adds value to a man's life. You know, that leech kind of woman who just sits home and looks pretty, it gets dry quick. Yeah, you run out of conversation, you run out of novelty and excitement, and you're not inspired by that woman anymore. So I would say she adds value in some way, shape or form. Maybe she takes away your domestic duties, or maybe she takes away some of your emotional concerns. She adds some value to your life rather than just taking it. The other thing I would say with high value women is they need to be feminine. They have to be in touch with their nurturing side. They have to love kids. Not even if you don't want kids. The woman that loves kids and loves nurturing, she treats you better than the woman who's like, I don't want kids, I don't want this, I don't want that, blah, blah. They treat you better. Nurturing women treat you better. So women that loves children, loves family, loves this, good background, that does make a difference. And the final thing I would say is women with boundaries. What happens with women with clear boundaries, and you know you're going to lose her if you act a certain way, it makes a man exercise more self-control. It makes a man become a better version of himself. But when she accepts anything and everything, he becomes like a dog without a leash, and they don't want that. Truly, they want some boundaries. Everybody. More so boundaries rather than feisty. They don't want to be fighting all the time, but they do want to know there's a threat. Like everybody, we need boundaries, otherwise we don't know what we're doing. We become lawless. And relationships, you need some boundaries. If I have a partner that accepts me hitting him, cheating on him, swearing at him, I become a woman I don't like. So why would I want a partner like that? Similarly, if a man has a woman who lets her hit him, lets them swear, there's no way he's going to feel good being with a woman like that. Lets him cheat. Even though they claim they love cheating, there's an element of shame and guilt after every time you can't control yourself. I'm going to get lots of like incels who've never even had a girlfriend say, no, we don't cheat. No, we don't feel guilty, but they do. And if you don't feel guilty, you've divorced emotion from attachment, and that's not good. That's not good either. If you don't feel any guilt when you cheat, because here's why you should feel some level of shame. You're living two lives. Anybody who lives inauthentically should feel guilty or should feel ashamed of themselves, because you're still not in your masculine if you're living two lives. You have not got the balls to say to somebody, I'm doing this tonight. When you can't express what you're actually, who you truly are, and you're living a double life, how can you be a masculine man? The men that actually say, I'm married to 2 women, I've got 3 girlfriends, they don't feel any shame or guilt because they're expressing their authentic self. But the man who has to hide his phone, run here, send his location there, what nonsense is this? How are you a high-value man if you're scared your girlfriend's going to ring you at a certain time? You're shook of her. So live an authentic life, and then you won't feel any shame or guilt. But the guy that has to hide it, even if he doesn't feel any guilt for cheating on his girlfriend, he feels some shame that he has to live a double life.
Yeah.
No one likes living a double life. It's not conducive to good mental health. We could meet the same man and you have a completely different experience to what I would have of him, and I might have a completely different experience of how you have it. And with hot girls, they get the worst version of men. They really get the worst version of men. Again, the men in the comments, oh, you're blaming us. But here's what it is. Men like sex. They like pretty women. So when they see a pretty girl and a hot girl, they can't help but become a guy that's trying to conquer her, they're trying to get her. And he'll risk it all. If he's married, he doesn't care. If it's at the gym, he doesn't care. If it's at work, he'll cross the work boundaries. They lose their sense of professionalism or their sense of like loyalty just to kind of get an access to her. So she starts to go through life thinking, men are trash. This guy had a girlfriend. This guy was married. That guy's my boss. And he still moved to me. I still tried to be, my London comes out. He still tried to get to me. So she starts to see men as creatures who can't control their sexual urges. Whereas you take a basic or plain Jane, she can be in a bikini next to a guy and he doesn't even notice her. And so she thinks men are, they're fine, they're sufferable, they don't do anything. This is in cultures where you minimize the emotional attachment to sex, and men, this is another thing men are delusional about. They think women can't have sex without emotion. Yes, they can. How do you think prostitutes have done it their whole lives? They can when they decide to monetize it. And men and women. Here's the thing, we've gotten so used to the idea that men and women are different when it comes to sex, and men can have sex with everybody and anyone, and women can have sex with just one man, but here's the thing, it's psychological for both people. Ask men who cheat, they're usually going through an ego boost. They need an ego boost, or they feel unappreciated by their wife, or they've just lost their job and they need an escapism. It's psychological. If it was biological, they'd have sex with their wife all day, every day, but they don't. So it's a case of, there's an escapism. There's some psychological escapism. Now, for women who do it, it's definitely a sense of she's met people who have used her body so many times against her will that now she's trying to take back control. There's a reason why sex abuse leads to prostitution, really high rate. They find that sex workers, I'm sure it's different now, but the last time they looked at the data before it became glorified, sex workers have a real history of childhood abuse. And what happens is when you've been abused or molested as a child, the control has been taken out of your hands. Somebody's accessed your body and violated it without your permission. So to reestablish control, the person who's been a victim starts to then sell their body. And so you can only access me on my terms now. And it's a form of regaining control. But until you undo the trauma, it's going to happen again and again. Yeah, I would imagine they were violated at some point. And I actually think it doesn't even need a violation. I actually think it's the culture of losing your virginity at a young age.
Really?
Yeah. I think that the reason why we have so many sugar babies now and so much is they lost their virginity at a young... I used to be a teacher. So I would have Monday mornings of girls coming into my office and being like, oh, miss, I need to get an abortion quickly. And, oh, this awful stuff like this. And they would lose their virginity at such a young age. And the advent of Snapchat meant that 11-year-olds were sending nudes. And it's like, 11, sending nudes? What are you talking? I didn't even know what that was a thing. But when you do that at such a young age, there's no way you don't experience shame and guilt. Impossible. Because nobody looks at losing their virginity at 12, 13 years old and thinking, yeah, that was a good idea. So to reestablish control over that experience is to then monetize sex and make sex feel like it's just a job. And then you don't feel so guilty and ashamed of what you did when you were young. OnlyFans girls, I can imagine they lost their virginity either non-consensually or too young. I don't believe it can be consensual when you're young. I worked with kids and I see they're kids. They're so small. So even 15, 16, which is the legal age, they're kids. There's no decision you can make at 16 and still make the same decision at 30. So it's too young. Somebody's taking the time to marry you and invest in you, and you're having a whole courtship, and there's a wedding, and there's a meher, a dowry. So there's no lack of self-esteem. But a 15-year-old who's had sex in the back of a park by a guy that she just wanted him to like her more, and it's not really because she loves him, there's a completely different self-worth that comes attached to that.
Interesting.
And it's the culture. And, when I was a teacher, it would shock me that parents would be like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's just staying at her boyfriend's house this weekend, and they'd be 14, 15 years old. And I'd be like, come on, Janet, you can be stricter than that, babes. What's going on? Because they would literally be like, oh, she's staying with her boyfriend or going on holiday with her boyfriend. And they're like 16, 15. Oh, they're too young. I would literally be beside myself if that was the case. Yeah, I would literally be beside myself because it's just too young. So they can't even do their homework on time. And you think they should know what their sexual partner should look like. She might be poor and then she gets married at 15 years old, but there's a whole shebang. There's a whole ceremony. It's, parents are like giving her away. You feel like a woman. They make you feel like a woman, but there's none of that when you're just a teenager who's had a crush on a boy, doesn't know how to get his attention, so now you sleep with him.